After 2 decades serving in the Army Corps of Engineers, all I wanted was quiet. I came home to the sunburned edges of Arizona, where the horizon stretches wide and the silence carries weight. My uncle had passed away last spring, leaving me his old ranch-style home tucked against the edge of a growing suburb called Maplewood Lakes, a place that looked peaceful from a distance, but harbored a restless kind of order, the kind enforced by a homeowners association. They called themselves the Maplewood Lakes Preservation Committee, but they operated more like a petty tribunal. My property, technically, was never part of the HOA. It sat just outside the original development line. But over the years, the committee had extended their reach like a creeping vine, redrawing their imaginary maps to include what was never theirs, and leading that charge was Karen Belmont. If control had a face, it was hers. A perfectly symmetrical bob, pastel-colored blouses starched into submission, and a voice that turned every sentence into a passive-aggressive command. She walked with a clipboard in the confidence of someone who'd never been challenged. I moved in. The first time she approached me, she didn't smile. She handed me a printed packet labeled Community Compliance Expectations. New residents are required to conform to HOA exterior standards within 30 days, she said, already eyeing my truck like it was leaking oil on her tulips. I'm not in the HOA, I replied, straight and polite. She blinked. Oh, we've had that confusion before. Your lot is adjacent. You're considered under extended jurisdiction, not legally. Her smile thinned, but she didn't argue further. She simply walked off, the heels of her shoes clicking like a judge's gavel. I hoped that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Over the next few weeks, Karen left notes in my mailbox. Your flagpole is non-compliant with height regulations. Please, repaint your shutters to match the subdivision palette. Your trash bins were visible from the road at 7:02 a.m. on a Thursday. This is a citation-worthy offense. Each time I returned her notes with a sticky on the back. Not in the HOA, but she kept pushing. The neighbors warned me. Karen wasn't just nosy, she was strategic. She'd been behind dozens of rule changes, redistricting attempts, and community amendments meant to bring more properties under her thumb. And while most people just gave in to keep the peace, I wasn't most people. I didn't move into a desert to be told how to trim my cactus. So I pushed back quietly when she sent me a fine. I mailed it back with a photocopy of my deed highlighted in yellow. When she threatened legal action over my solar panels, I cited the Arizona solar rights law in a registered letter. And when she tried to report me for structural deviation, I invited the county inspector myself. He left impressed by my handiwork. You see, I'd rebuilt the entire patio. The original wood deck was rotting, so I replaced it with reinforced composite, military grade, resistant to heat and weather. But the real genius was hidden underneath the hydraulic tilt system, designed to angle and drain water away from the house during flash floods, a trick I picked up during a dam project in Kandahar. No one knew about the mechanism, not even Karen. It wasn't meant for her. Until the day I came home and found her standing on it, clipboard in one hand, cell phone in the other, surrounded by white folding chairs and fresh flower arrangements. At first I didn't understand what I was seeing. Then I heard it: music, classical strings, soft and elegant. A man in a tuxedo was giving instructions to a florist arranging a massive arch. Catering vans were parked across my gravel, and the banner tied to the porch railing read "Bell Wedding Ceremony 4 p.m. today." I parked and got out slowly. Karen turned, beaming like she'd just won a presidential election. Oh good, you're back. Don't worry, we'll be done by sunset. Try not to park in the main path. Guests will be arriving soon. She was on my patio, hosting a full-blown wedding, and in that moment watching her bark orders on my property like she owned it. A quiet thought slid into my mind: you picked the wrong engineer, Karen, and I hadn't even touched the control panel yet. The Arizona sun bore down like judgment as I stood at the edge of my own patio, watching a wedding materialize beneath Karen's command. She was draped in an ivory shawl, orchestrating the setup with all the grace of a tyrant on a power trip. Place the dessert table there, next to the arch, and tell the DJ to angle the speakers toward the patio, not the driveway. She snapped at a confused young planner. She moved like this was her home, her property, her domain, and to everyone around her, it must have looked like it was. I strode past a flurry of white folding chairs and caterers in black aprons. No one made eye contact. No one asked who I was. I was invisible until I walked up behind her and cleared my throat. She turned with the fakest smile I've ever seen. Oh Ed, wonderful timing. You'll want to move your truck before guests start parking. I didn't return the smile. What is this? She blinked innocently. Oh, didn't you hear? We're having Maddie's wedding right here. Isn't it beautiful here? I asked. You mean on my patio? Karen laughed like I'd just told a charming joke. Don't be dramatic. It's communal land per our emergency event use clause. There's no such clause, and this isn't communal land. You're trespassing. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes narrowed. Ed, let's not escalate. You're surrounded by community members now. This is a happy day for my daughter. Are you really going to be that guy? That guy who wants people off his property? Yeah, I'm him. Karen stepped forward, lowering her voice. Look, this wedding has been in the works for months. Dozens of families are involved. You weren't using the patio. It's just one afternoon. You'll be remembered as the neighbor who ruined a wedding or the one who showed grace. Your call. I took a breath. She'd boxed me in with public pressure, emotional manipulation, and sheer audacity. It wasn't just about the wedding, it was about control. Karen wasn't here because my patio was convenient. She was making a statement, she thought. I wouldn't fight her in front of all these people, but she didn't know what I had built beneath her perfectly arranged chairs. Still, I needed leverage, legal leverage. So I turned and walked back toward my house. I could feel her eyes on my back, waiting to see if I'd take the bait and throw a fit in front of the wedding party. Not yet inside. I pulled my property deed from the file drawer, complete with the official survey line showing my boundary. Started 5 feet beyond the edge of the patio. The HOA had zero claim. Next, I checked the tilt system app. Fully functional. Hydraulics calibrated, max tilt 27 degrees. Drainage mode, active. And in that moment, I had two choices: shut down the wedding quietly, or let Karen show the world exactly how far her entitlement would go. I chose neither. I chose timing. Back outside, the ceremony was taking final shape. A full 100 chairs now, all facing the arch, placed perfectly at the patio's highest point. The wedding planner, sweating through his button-down, was adjusting tablecloths to stop them from lifting in the breeze. Someone placed the wedding cake in elaborate, multi-tiered tower of frosted roses dead center under the arch. Karen walked by, humming along to the rehearsal violinist. She didn't even glance at me. That was her mistake, because in war, there's a rule: never underestimate someone whose hands are still. I stood quietly on the lawn, arms crossed, watching the guests arrive in pastel dresses and navy suits, watching Karen greet them with pride. She believed this moment was hers. What she didn't know was that her daughter's wedding was built literally on a foundation she had no right to touch. I checked the time. It was 3:58 p.m. The ceremony would begin in 2 minutes, and in 3, the ground beneath her would shift. The guests settled into their chairs with polite chatter and clinking glasses, unaware that the ground beneath them was more than decorative composite. It was engineered steel, reinforced hydraulics, precision mechanics, designed to shift with a tap of my thumb. I stood in the shade of a mesquite tree, silent, uninvited, but very much in control. At 4 p.m. sharp, the violinist struck the first note. The officiant, a portly man in a cream-colored suit, stepped up to the microphone and cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today. The bride, Karen's daughter Maddie, stood at the edge of the patio, radiant and nervous, clutching a bouquet of lilies. The groom wiped sweat from his forehead as he adjusted his tie. Everything looked perfect, except the entire ceremony was unfolding on stolen ground. Karen, perched in the front row, looked pleased with herself, like a queen presiding over a parade. I reached into my pocket and opened the Tilt app. Tilt, initiation. 5%. A soft groan echoed beneath the patio boards. At first no one noticed, then a water glass slid gently off a cocktail table and shattered against the brick below. Guests murmured. The officiant paused, confused. I tapped again. Tilt initiation. 12%. The wedding arch swayed. One of its tulle ribbons detached, fluttering into the breeze like a warning flag. Chairs began to creak and shift. Someone shouted, "Is the ground moving?" The bride stumbled, heels struggling for balance on the uneven surface. The groom reached out to steady her, but both of them were already leaning uphill. The case, that glorious monstrosity of sugar and hubris, trembled like a skyscraper in a windstorm. The top tier slipped sideways and splattered across. A bridesmaid's satin dress. Panic bloomed like wildfire. Gasps turned to shrieks as more chairs tipped. Champagne spilled in arcs across the patio. The violinist fell backward with a crash of discordant strings. I dialed it up. Tilt initiation. 22%. The arch crashed sideways. Karen screamed. Guests scrambled toward the lower end of the patio, but the incline had become too steep. Several slid helplessly, tumbling into flower arrangements or landing face first in the decorative gravel at the patio's edge. The DJ tried to grab his speaker stand. It tipped and exploded in sparks. His laptop clattered down the incline and into the koi pond. I stepped forward, calm, collected. Karen was crawling across the slanted surface, soaked in punch and rage. "What did you do?" she shrieked. I stopped a few feet from her, arms crossed. I activated flood mode. I said flatly, "This is criminal," she screamed, mascara bleeding down her cheeks. "You'll be sued, arrested, on my land," I asked, pulling the laminated deed from my back pocket and tossing it at her feet. "You trespassed. You held an unauthorized event. You caused property damage. That's real criminal, Karen." She tried to stand, but her heels betrayed her, and she tumbled back, down the patio toward the koi pond. The splash that followed was strangely satisfying. The bride, her dress streaked with cake and mud, shouted at Karen, "Mum, you said this was legal." Karen was too soaked, too stunned, to answer. The guests were scattering now, fleeing to their cars, trailing ruined linens and wilted centerpieces behind them. The only sound left was the soft gurgle of koi pond fountains, and the wet slosh of someone's shoe stuck in a planter. I reset the app. Tilt reset, leveling the hydraulic side. As the patio slowly returned to flat, water drained, debris shifted. The platform settled like a sleeping beast. That I stood there in the silence that followed, letting Karen absorb the humiliation. Her guests were gone. Her daughter was crying. The perfect day she'd stolen had turned into a viral disaster. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw a punch. I didn't even call the cops. I just did what I was trained to do: identify pressure points and apply subtle force. And Karen, she finally learned what it felt like to lose control. The next morning, my phone buzzed before sunrise. News of the wedding slide had already hit local Facebook groups and started circulating on TikTok. A guest had filmed the entire patio tilt, beginning with the trembling arch and ending with Karen flailing into the koi pond. The clip was barely 30 seconds, but the internet was already having a field day. Bridezilla's mom gets tilted. HOA gone wild. Watch a wedding melt. Tilted Karen, the patio clapback. No one saw coming. Within hours, it had gone viral. But that wasn't the satisfying part. The satisfying part came when a black SUV pulled up around noon. Out stepped an official from the county zoning office, followed by a sheriff's deputy and a clipboard carrying a woman from civil litigation. Karen was standing at the curb, sunglasses barely hiding her bruised ego. Her daughter hadn't spoken to her since the cake collapse, and most of the guests had posted awkward apologies online, some condemning her for taking over someone's home. I stood on my front porch, arms folded, as the zoning officer approached you, Edward Mason. Yes, sir. He pulled out a copy of my deed and tapped it with a pen, just confirming this entire lot, including the structure formerly known as Wedding Hill, is 100% privately owned. Outside HOA jurisdiction, correct survey markers are still in place. 2. Karen rushed forward, lips trembling with faux concern. He ambushed the ceremony, deliberately endangered guests. The zoning officer didn't even turn to her. Ma'am, you hosted a large-scale event without permits, insurance, or the property owner's permission. I am the HOA president. And this property, the officer said, finally facing her, is not under your HOA. You committed trespass, misused association funds for a private event, and falsely claimed legal authority. That's not just wrong, it's actionable. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. The civil litigation rep stepped in. You'll be hearing from Mr. Mason's attorney regarding damages, and if the HOA board approved any of this, under false pretenses, they'll be liable to. Karen's composure cracked. This is revenge. He humiliated me in front of everyone. I finally spoke. Karen, I gave you warning after warning. I tried reasoning. You ignored me. This wasn't revenge, it was engineering. The sheriff stepped forward. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me. You'll be booked and released. Charges include trespassing, public endangerment, and unauthorized use of property. She turned pale. You can't arrest me. I'm the face of this community. That's exactly why we have to. The sheriff replied. As they placed her in the SUV, Karen locked eyes with me one last time. No screaming, no clipboard waving, just disbelief that the very rules she wielded like weapons had finally snapped back like a steel trap. In the weeks that followed, the HOA board held an emergency vote. Karen was unanimously removed. Several members resigned. The community newsletter now featured a very different tone, more neighborly, less authoritarian. A few days later, I received a handwritten note from Maddie, Karen's daughter. Dear Mr. Mason, I had no idea what my mother had done. I'm sorry. Thank you for standing your ground even if it meant flipping mine. Honestly, it probably saved my marriage before it even began. Respectfully, Maddie Belmont Michaels. I folded the letter and slipped it in the same drawer where I kept the tilt control. Not for revenge, not for show, but as a reminder. The strongest defense is staying quiet until it's time to move. And the patio, I rebuilt it, leveled and reinforced once more. But this time, I added one more feature. A brass plaque, bolted right into the edge, greater than respect the foundation. Just subtle enough for those who understood, just bold enough for anyone who didn't. And as for me, I went back to drinking my coffee in peace, watching the sunrise from the same deck Karen once tried to claim. Only now, everyone in Maple Lakes knew the truth. You can play your games on my land, but when the ground shifts, don't act surprised.